Good morning, everyone. I'm Vicky Saumell. I'm afraid there is no AI artifact that can deliver this presentation for me. So here I am in the flesh, all the way from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I would like to thank IATEFL and the Board of Trustees for having me here today and allowing me to share my views on what seems to be one of the topics of the moment. So I would like to start with some questions that I've heard around the use of AI in our field. I've been reading a lot, and I've been listening to people, and I have put together 10 questions that I think kind of summarize what people are wondering and asking about AI these days. Now, let's have a look at them. The first is, what strategies are there for AI to empower teachers rather than replace them? How can AI be seamlessly integrated into existing ELT curricula without overwhelming or alienating teachers? But there are other questions. What are the big commercial players in ELT doing? How can we exploit the potential of AI regarding personalization? How can AI support language assessment and evaluation in ELT? What are the current limitations of AI in ELT, and how might they be addressed in the future? What are the potential future trends and advancements in AI that could further revolutionize ELT? But I think more important than these questions are the last three. What, if any, work is being done to counter the environmental damage that AI is causing? And how bad is it? What are the ethical considerations and challenges associated with using AI in language education? And is AI going to democratize education or further the digital divide? I would need much longer to be able to answer all these questions now and today. So some of these questions will be addressed. The others will remain questions for us to ponder, discuss, and hopefully try to find an answer to during these 4 days. So before we can even look at language learning itself, I think we need to look at some of the basics. So I'll be looking at some definitions, I'll be looking at how AI works, and I'll be showing you some relevant facts and figures. Now, in order to understand generative AI, we need to look at the broader terms. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, there are other terms that come into play. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. And generative AI is a subset of deep learning. But what do these mean? Machine learning is a data-driven approach that involves training algorithms using large data sets that are labeled, manually labeled, so that they learn and adapt. Some examples of machine learning are product recommendations on social media or on streaming services, spam email filtering, and algorithmic trading. Now, deep learning can process unstructured data, which means that the data sets don't need predefined formats or manually created labels. In healthcare, deep learning is used to create predictive models for disease diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment. But other examples of deep learning include facial recognition, speech recognition, virtual assistants, self-driving cars, and automatic machine translation. So, what is generative AI? This is one of many definitions available. And I like to focus on the word new. Generative AI creates something new. But how does it do it? It analyzes data and uncovers the underlying grammar within the data sets by recognizing objective patterns and working out frequencies within them. It then mimics the language to create something new, though necessarily derived from the data. When we talk about generative AI chatbots like OpenAI ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini, for example, we are talking about tools that are based on large language models, or LLMs. These LLMs have been fed huge amounts of data. They have analyzed it, and they have come up with statistical correlations to articulate these interactions. So, generative AI does not really know or understand things. They are doing advanced mathematical calculations. And when they don't know, when it does not know, it hallucinates, it invents, it fills in the gaps. Now, in order to recap how AI works, these are 4 features of AI. It is data-driven, as we said before. But this means it's only as good as the data it's been fed with. And I will come back to this, because it's an essential aspect that needs to be addressed in more detail. It is creative, which means it creates something new each time, as it was mentioned in the definition. I know this might be controversial, because some people argue that it merely regurgitates what it's learned. But the fact that most results are different based on the prompt wording, the context, and the data available might help to back up this creativity claim. It can improve over time, as it is fed information in 2 distinctive ways. First, by its creators from the training data sets. Second, by the constant use by anyone. So everything you input into a publicly available open AI tool becomes part of its data set. And when we are asked for positive or negative feedback of the results, that is used to retrain the models continually. So it learns, but this also raises questions about data privacy. It is versatile, which means it can carry out a wide variety of tasks, not just searching. And of course, I think we will see new applications being disclosed as we speak, right? Now, I think we need to look at some facts and figures that will help us see the magnitude of what we're talking about. The global artificial intelligence in education market value is rising with very steep projections. So we are only seeing the beginning of the AI revolution. Now, this revolution is evident as we look at this other data. The annual number of AI research papers has increased 40%. The number one researcher in the world is the US, with 30% of the total research. Number two is China, with 18%. Africa, South America, and most Asian nations have only contributed less than 5% of the total research. So this might be an indication of the global divide. Now, the number of generative AI-related jobs has also increased 36 times compared to last year. Prompt engineering courses abound in both formal and informal settings. But people hired for these positions are being selected on a skills-first mindset because there didn't used to be certifications before. There is a website called There Is an AI for That. It's a repository of AI tools where you can search for an available tool to carry out a specific task. It currently lists 12,261 AI tools for 15,348 tasks in 4,846 jobs. How can we keep up with that? Can we? Now, the facts and figures related to the environmental impact of AI cannot be ignored. The carbon footprint of creating, training, and prompting generative AI is considerable, both in terms of electricity and water resources needed to run and cool down the servers used. These are other figures that might help us to understand this. These figures make it seem that we are at odds with a much agreed sustainability stance. Now, quantifying and comparing figures with more visual representations as countries in the other slide and cars and swimming pools and bottles of water later have helped me to make better sense of the data. Image generation is particularly energy intensive. Data centers' server rooms must be kept cool at around 10 to 27 degrees Celsius to avoid equipment malfunctioning. they must use clean, fresh water to avoid corrosion and bacteria growth associated with seawater. Fresh water is also necessary for humidity control in these rooms. This is one of Google's hyper data centers, one in Oregon. And what you can see is the steam coming out from the 4 cooling towers used. So whenever you hear, don't worry, if you don't get your result right, or a precise result, you can refine the prompt and try again. You may want to think about water consumption each time you prompt a generative AI tool. Now, the next question I want to address is, what can AI do? Now, these days is rather what can't it do, but what can AI do? And I'm sure you've seen loads of examples of the kinds of things that can be done using AI. Impressive videos of people who cannot speak another language, speaking impeccable English, Japanese, Swedish, German. Whole videos created from text prompts, voice cloning, and much, much more. So, you may be disappointed, but rather than showing you examples, I have created 2 visuals to summarize this. These are some things AI can create, some things that teachers or students might need or want to use. AI can also carry out all of these tasks, and we expect this list to grow considerably. Now, these are just possibilities, not an endorsement of what I would particularly use AI for. So, whenever we talk about AI, people tend to adopt a particular stance in this debate. So, I want you to invite you to think where you stand. And if we look at this as a continuum of opinions, the first group is the deniers or resistors. Oh, I don't want to go anywhere near it, or this will be our downfall. The second group is the indifferents. Oh yeah, I've heard about it, but haven't tried it yet, or I don't think there's anything in it for me, really. The third group is the cautious optimists, those who prefer to have an open dialogue with it in order to assess its value. The last group are the enthusiasts or preachers, those who swear it's the best thing ever, those who want to do everything with AI. So, where do you stand? And I think it depends on how AI affects you. How does it affect us? And who is us? Although IATEFL is a teachers' association, its members are not only teachers. We are part of an industry that includes many more roles. So, for the past few months, I've reached out to colleagues in these groups. Because although I wear some, I'll go back to this. So this is the groups I thought we could have. This is how I grouped the roles. We have teachers and teacher trainers. We have directors of studies and administrators. We have materials writers and illustrators. And we have publishers and editors. And although I do wear some of these hats myself, I could not possibly pretend to wear them all or know about them in detail. So I have reached out to colleagues in these different roles and asked their opinions in order to inform this talk. Some of them will be named with their permission. Some preferred to remain anonymous. They all selflessly shared their views with me, and I am really grateful to them. So let's start. This is what I did. I asked them about their role in a closed question so that I could then classify the information they gave me. And then I asked them 3 very open-ended questions so that there would be enough room for personal expression. I asked about their positive and negative views about AI, and I asked them what the impact on their role was. How has AI impacted your role already? So it is very difficult to quantify impact. But I found that there is an AI job impact score that someone created. And this is shown as a percentage, and it is calculated based on the tasks that can be done using AI, the tasks that are relevant for a job, and the AI current capabilities for these tasks. And so this impact score is expressed as a percentage where 0% indicates that the job has no impact, that AI has no impact on the job, and 100% indicates that this job could theoretically be fully automated using AI based on current capabilities. There is no certainty that this is accurate enough, but I have included it as a curiosity, okay? So let's have a look at our first group. Our first group was the teachers and teacher trainers. The impact score for teachers is 20%. So it's not that high. But what did they have to say? On a positive note, many mentioned they are using it as a personal and research assistant. That was the main reply. But they also mentioned that they use it to generate ideas, to summarize, to generate texts and questions, and for writing support. A common negative view related to students using AI was uncritical use, misuse, and academic integrity. As a language lover, Divya Madhavan's concern was that students may be falling out of love with language really resonated with me. I fear that our students will be trying to find shortcuts that will undermine their learning. Now, when asked about the impact on their roles, they mentioned that AI-mediated exchanges seem to be more efficient, but less authentic. They recognize that AI literacy has become essential. And they feel the need to redesign take-home writing assignments in light of plagiarism. And I will come back to plagiarism later. So it seems that teachers and teacher trainers will use AI and might use AI for things that will help to reduce their workload. And that may free time for them to pay attention to other tasks where AI is not so good at. I guess the key will be finding out and figuring out which are the things that AI is good at and which are not. Now, let's look at our second group, directors of studies and administrators. This group was not represented in the job impact score. Might this mean they are safe? Their positive and negative views about AI were very similar to the previous group. So I'm going to jump straight into the impact on their roles. They all agreed that there's a need to monitor and ensure academic integrity on all qualifications and assessment. And this leads to AI plagiarism detection that I will address later. They also mentioned that some are using AI for marketing, and one very prestigious institution is working on including AI practices in all of the courses. I guess that for directors of studies and administrators, we have something similar than for teachers. They will need to find out which things AI is good at, like process automation and routine tasks, and that will free time for them to focus on more human tasks. Our third group is materials writers and illustrators. For content writers, the score is 35%. And for illustrators, it's 40%. So this is a bit higher. But what did they have to say? They agreed that AI is saving them time and helping them to produce certain content more easily, especially images. On a negative note, they were worried again about ethical aspects like copyright and also about AI misuse. Although creating images is very quick, in the words of Cathy Bilsborough, an illustrator, it is hard to replicate a personal style in illustrations. So, there we go. As regards the impact on their roles, most of them are using them as a research assistant. Some have been getting explicit guidelines from publishers about using AI. And some have seen AI-related clauses included in their contracts. Now, in some institutions, multiple roles have been replaced by one prompt engineer. So, I guess for material writers and illustrators, it seems AI will be very useful in assisting research. But I believe that their expertise and their personal style is really hard to replicate and should be their trademark, and maybe path to survival. Now, the next group, and the last group, is publishers and editors. It is in this group where I saw the most changes already happening. The impact score for publishers is 25%. It's not that high. So let's have a look at what they told me. Positive aspects of AI were reported extensively, like there were lots. Personalization opportunities, like personalized feedback and support, was one of the main trends, especially in regions where there is a teacher shortage. They also mentioned the ease to prompt illustrations and create more authentic materials. Now, creating more accessible and affordable content for certain regions which would benefit from this is a welcome option. AI-mediated technologies that do not require changes in infrastructure or digital skills will benefit students in regions with limited resources. So we could be taking a step towards the democratization of education here. Ben Knight's belief that AI can cover more mechanical aspects and teachers can focus more on engagement and more nuanced aspects of teaching is a view I share as well. There are quite a few negative opinions here. Materials shifting to areas which AI can handle better and neglecting others, and thus leading to the dumbing down of content is a concern. Assessment is also in the spotlight. What if AI assessment is given more value than human judgment? Personal data collection is another concern. And it should be noted here that there is a difference in how data is collected and used between publicly available open AI tools and closed AI platforms. Further concerns are de-skilling and the loss of human connection. Publishers becoming silos of wealth and power, and therefore furthering the digital divide is a scary but real concern. And what about producing content without editorial scrutiny to prioritize a fast turnaround? Some of these seem exaggerated, but are they? When asked about the impact on their roles, they mentioned they are researching the potential impact of AI on teaching and learning materials. They are looking for ways to improve learning materials and tools. Some publishers are creating prototypes for experimenting with prompting within a designed interface, for example, to create lessons. One publisher is already using AI in these areas: ethics and legality, internal efficiency through process automation, and low-cost content creation. So it seems that publishers and editors are quickly finding ways to make AI work for them. But I still think that the vast experience and the myriad of decisions made when creating and publishing materials is far from replaceable. So, in order to recap and reflect, I had put together some ideas that for me, are the core issues around AI looking ahead. At the beginning of the talk, I mentioned that AI is data-driven. Now, the question is, which data? Unfortunately, most of it tends to represent a subset of our world's geographical and cultural perspectives. Stodd, Schatz, and Stead mentioned the acronym WEIRD in their book, Engines of Engagement. A must read. WEIRD. Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic cultures are overrepresented among the creators and curators of AI. This means, and this has a direct result in output that is ridden with inherent biases and assumptions, like discrimination, gender assumptions, and sexist views. Now, most of our social attitudes are slowly changing. But the vast majority of our historical and visual records represent models that have become outdated. We cannot escape the fact that we are biased by nature. There are lots of systematic, inherent biases interwoven into our reality, and this is obviously transferred to AI. Let me tell you a very simple example of gender and race bias. If you are on social media, you may already have seen it. But if you prompt a generative AI tool, chatbot, or image creator with a prompt that includes the words a doctor and a nurse, guess what? Most results will show the doctor as male and the nurse as female. And probably the doctor will be Caucasian and the nurse won't. Now, another problem associated with data sets is that AI is poisoning AI. So AI-generated content is filling the internet at an unprecedented rate. So there's a fear of the unintentional introduction of errors into the data sets that are used to retrain the models or train new models. This could lead to model collapse, where compounded errors lead to significantly compromised output. This could have drastic consequences for Gen AI models and their training. Now, another issue that is related to the data is multilingual representation. The British Council report states that generative AI is standardizing languages and ideologies. So we have two questions around this. The first is most data is in English. Most models are trained with the majority of data in English, most data sets in English. So a lower percentage of data sets in other language is reflected in the quality of the results in those minority languages. And also, which English? There is a lack of recognition of nuances and exclusion of certain groups and varieties of English altogether. This has a direct effect on plagiarism detection. We cannot overlook the issue of copyright, and this again has two sides. The first is, who owns the copyright of AI-generated content? And this is being discussed at all levels, but it is not clear at all yet. Is it, some say it's public domain, others that it's the person or legal entity that generated it. The second is the claim that large language models have been trained using copyrighted data. And this is also under scrutiny in various international courts and is undergoing ethical examination. One such example is the case of the New York Times suing OpenAI and Microsoft over the use of copyrighted work. It's still too early to know, but this too could have drastic consequences on Gen AI models and their training. As mentioned before by several colleagues, there is a real concern related to academic integrity. Institutions are trying to figure out how to address plagiarism and cheating. Most, or you can see this in the development of AI use policies and guidelines, but institutions are also using AI detectors. And these detectors are being used to punish offenders. Now, the problem with AI detectors is that they still prove quite problematic because they turn a high frequency of false positives. And they have been shown to discriminate against non-native speakers of English. I have already shown you several figures related to the environmental impact of AI. And this only goes to show that technological progress is not always in line with other global issues. Most or many organizations are working on ways to reduce the environmental impact of their operations, such as solar farms to power their plants, some experiments repurposing the fresh water used or using seawater, but it's still too early to know whether they will succeed. One last concern is that of unequal access leading to furthering the digital divide. There is a huge concern about the research being done that can widen the global divide, especially between the global north and the south. It's no surprise that most companies have done more research about AI than governments since 2021. And the analysis of the data shows a stark divide in AI research and development. So countries like India are gaining ground in AI research, but the leaders in the traditional leaders in Europe and North America are still producing high volumes. The rest of the countries, developing countries, are trying to get more seats at the table. still. So, where do you stand now? Has your opinion changed? Where do you think I stand? So, depending on where you stand now, you may already have a closing argument in your mind. So let me share mine. We will continue to see AI develop. But I think that what makes us human is very hard to replicate. Our subjective patterns, humor, wit, empathy, our social, emotional intelligence. I think we will be okay as long as we play to what makes us different and sets us apart. As long as we understand that our critical thinking, our human touch and connection will allow us to navigate these times and empower ourselves. Thank you.
Well done. Excellent. If you have questions for Vicky, you can ask them this afternoon. She will be answering questions at 15:35 in meeting room 3, okay? If you missed the beginning or you want to watch this again, the recordings of the plenaries will go live each night at 8 p.m. on our social media channels. So you'll be able to see Vicky do it all again from 8 p.m. tonight. Thank you very much. Enjoy conference, and thank you, Vicky.